They say Texas land remembers every boot that ever touched it. And mine remembers something I'm not willing to let anyone rewrite, especially not a woman with a clipboard and a crowd of strangers holding hot dogs on my dock. I never planned to become the enemy of an entire neighborhood. I never imagined people I waved to for 2 years would turn their backs on me overnight. And I sure didn't think I'd end up studying Texas Penal Code at my kitchen table at 3 in the morning. But here we are. My name is Cole Mercer, and this is the story of how my family's Marina, my grandfather's legacy, turned into a war zone because an HOA president decided she owned what she didn't build. It started on a Saturday morning in June, too warm for that time of day, the kind of heat that sits on your shoulders before you've even had your first cup of coffee. I woke up to laughter, loud, careless, floating in through my bedroom window, and it didn't sound like the kind that belonged on my shoreline. I looked out toward the water, expecting to see maybe a neighbor fishing, maybe a couple walking early, but instead I saw folding chairs and tents and a grill smoking like a wildfire. And then I saw her, Patricia Colton, president of the Willow Creek Shores HOA, standing on my grandfather's dock with a microphone in her hand, as if she bought the place. Somebody had pulled my private property sign right out of the gate and tossed it in the dirt like a joke. I remember staring at it for 3 whole seconds, long enough to feel the first drop in my stomach, the kind you get when something is very wrong and you know it long before you admit it out loud. Now, before I go any further, let me tell you one thing about my grandfather. Raymond Mercer was a quiet man, a man made of river mud and cedar wood and cigarette smoke and carpentry nails. He built that dock board by board with his own hands when Willow Creek wasn't even a thought in a developer's mind. The title to that marina said 1984. The HOA didn't exist until 1997. And if there's one sentence I still hear in his voice, it's this. This land is Mercer land, and stories don't change just because someone prints a pamphlet. I threw on jeans, boots, walked down the path, and Patricia smiled like she'd been waiting to welcome me to my own property. "Well, good morning, Cole," she said, voice sugar-sweet but sharp underneath. "Glad you finally joined us. We're celebrating community spirit today, a tradition here at the Willow Creek Marina." I could feel 40 sets of eyes land on me, strangers biting into burgers and waving at me like I was late to my own party. I kept my voice low and steady, though it felt strange, like stepping into someone else's mouth. "This is private property," I said. "You all need to leave now." Patricia lifted a binder like she was holding scripture, flipped to a page she'd already marked, and put her hand on my shoulder like she was consoling a child. "Oh, sweetie," she said, and I swear I had to stop myself from showing my teeth. "This is common property. Page 14. Right here. Marina access is a community amenity and always has been." Someone actually clapped. I don't know who, I just remember my fists curling, not because of the crowd, but because she said always. Always, as if history was hers to edit. I took pictures, chairs, families, the banner someone printed that said Willow Creek Summer Marina Day. I recorded Patricia saying the words common property. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. They weren't confused. This was deliberate. I called the sheriff's office, explained the trespassing, and they told me what I already suspected they'd say. "Sir, unless there's an immediate threat, this is a civil matter. You'll need to resolve it with the HOA or the courts." I walked back to the house, furious but focused, pulled up the county property search, typed my parcel ID, and there it was. Owner, Mercer Family Trust. No easements. No public access. No shared rights. Then I checked the HOA site, scrolling through their amenities list. And right between tennis court and walking trails was written, Marina access. Open to all Willow Creek Shores residents. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the words. Someone lied. Someone wanted my marina badly enough to rewrite the story. And I knew exactly who. That evening, I emailed the entire HOA board. Subject: unauthorized use of private property, Mercer Marina. I attached deeds, surveys, tax history, everything. I was polite, factual, and very, very clear. Continued unauthorized entry will be considered trespassing under Texas Penal Code 30.05. I thought maybe it would end there. But Patricia didn't reply to me. No, She sent a community-wide email. Neighbors I'd helped shovel driveways for, people I'd shared catfish with at potlucks. All of them received this. One resident is attempting to restrict access to a long-standing community space, historically shared by all. We must protect our common rights. By sunset, my phone buzzed with screenshots of angry comments. This guy thinks he owns the whole lake. Selfish land hoarder. Not how Texas neighborliness works. I hadn't said a word publicly, and I was already the villain. The next morning, I drove into town for groceries, and the silence hit me like humidity in August. Conversation stopped. A barista who used to ask about my week suddenly pretended she didn't see me. That night, my mailbox was spray-painted. Community over you. And I realized, sitting there on my porch, staring at a can of paint thinner and a lie, that Patricia wasn't just after my land. No, she was after my reputation, because reputation is cheaper to steal than property and easier to sell. But I also knew one more thing. My grandfather didn't raise a man who folds. I sat down, opened a new folder on my laptop, labeled it Marina War Evidence, and I started digging. County clerk records, development archives, HOA bylaw amendments, every late-night coffee turning into another thread pulled loose from Patricia's story, until something finally gave way. A knock at my door, slow, deliberate. When I opened it, Mr. Ellery, the oldest resident in Willow Creek, stood there with a folder under his arm. "I knew your granddaddy," he said, voice tired but clear, "and I remember the meeting when the developers tried to buy that marina, and I remember him saying no." He stepped closer, and I also remember that the word perpetuity was written on that document. We sat at my kitchen table, and that night, the story changed. Not because I found a way to win, but because I realized I wasn't alone. Mr. Ellery sat there at my kitchen table, the ceiling fan humming above us, pushing around warm Texas air that smelled like lake water and old wood. He slid a thin folder toward me, and I swear my hands shook as I opened it. Inside were copies, faded, curled at the edges, of original development notes from the late 90s, back when Willow Creek was just a blueprint on a desk. And right there, in handwriting that looked like it belonged to a lawyer who hadn't slept, was the sentence that changed everything. "The marina at Mercer Landing shall remain private property, held in perpetuity by the Mercer family and heirs." Perpetuity. Just like he said. Ellery leaned back, eyes tired but burning. "Patricia knows," he murmured. "She's a realtor. Access to a private marina could add $50, maybe $100,000 to each house she sells. Folks love a shoreline. Folks pay for a shoreline." I closed the folder, pushed my palms against it like I could fuse the truth into my bones. "Why didn't anybody say anything before?" I asked. He sighed. It was the kind of sign men give when they've seen too many small battles lost. "People get tired, son, and good folks stop fighting when the cost gets too high." I wasn't tired, though, not anymore. If Patricia wanted a history lesson, I was ready to teach a master class. So I built a case night after night. I printed maps, deed history, tax assessments. I saved screenshots of every hostile comment, every post calling me a thief. And then, the thing that turned my frustration into something sharp and strategic happened. Someone forwarded me an email thread by mistake. I still remember the subject line: Marina Strategy, Establishing Continuous Use. There it was in Patricia's own words: plans to stage events so they could claim long-term common access, to weaponize the idea of adverse possession, to create photos, flyers, witnesses, all to make it look like they'd use my marina forever. Wild how people forget that the internet keeps receipts. I printed it. 3 copies. One for me, one for my lawyer, and one I locked inside my grandfather's old tackle box because that was his kind of poetry. 2 days later, HOA sent me a $500 per day fine for unauthorized signage on my own gate. I actually laughed. Loud. The kind of laugh that surprises you and scares the dog. But see, something else was happening. Quietly, the tide was turning. A board member reached out. Not publicly, not boldly, but enough. "Cole, I can't be seen backing you," he wrote, "but I have financial concerns about contracts awarded under Patricia." Translation: There's more rot in this house than just peeling paint. We met outside county lines, in a diner off Highway 67. He wore a ball cap and kept looking at the door like he expected Patricia herself to burst in holding bylaws and a pitchfork. Then he handed me a flash drive and said 4 words that rewrote the entire playbook. Follow the money, Cole. Invoices. Tens of thousands of dollars paid for Marina repairs that never happened. Patricia's husband's contracting company listed as the vendor. No bids, no visible improvements, no paper trail except the one sitting on my laptop screen. It was fraud wearing HOA perfume. By the time the emergency town meeting was scheduled, I was ready, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood what this was really about. This was never just property. It was legacy and truth and the cost of letting lies stand unchallenged. The community center overflowed, every chair taken. People stood along walls, some curious, some hostile, some embarrassed for how fast they believed the worst of me. Patricia stood at the front, red blazer, confidence for sale in every gesture. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice sweet enough to pour over pancakes. "Tonight we address the issue of access to our community marina." Point of order. I stood, heart steady, voice clear. As the property owner, I have the right to present evidence before any vote. Murmurs. Paper shuffling. Patricia froze, jaw tight. "You have 10 minutes, she hissed. I connected my laptop to the projector, and my grandfather's dock filled the screen. The room quieted. Before Willow Creek Shores existed, I began, there was only the lake and a man who built a marina with his own hands. Slide. 1984 deed. Mercer Family Trust. Slide. County clerk letter. No easements, no shared ownership. Slide. Original development document. Private property in perpetuity. Then I showed the email. Patricia's email. She lunged forward, voice cracking. "That is out of context." I talked over her calmly. "You plan to fabricate a history to take a property you knew was private. You told this community a lie, and that lie turned neighbors into a mob." Gasps. Whispers rising like wind through cattails. Then I showed the financial records. "The HOA paid $73,400 for repairs here," I said, switching to dock photos, "yet every board, every nail is the same as 5 years ago." Silence. Thick, electric. The vice president stood. "I can confirm those invoices were approved without documentation." Patricia turned on him, finger shaking. "You traitor." And then Ellery, old as the shoreline itself, rose slowly. "I was here before most of you," he said. "That marina never belonged to Willow Creek." Ray Mercer was a stubborn man, but he was fair. If he saw what's been said about his grandson, he'd be ashamed of us. A woman near the front wiped her eyes. "I share those posts," she whispered. "I was wrong, Cole. I'm sorry." A vote was called. Remove Patricia as HOA president. Yes or no? Hands rose like a tide coming in. 134 for removal. 6 against. Patricia grabbed her things, stormed out, and the door slammed hard enough to rattle the Texas flag on the wall. The district attorney opened an investigation within a week. Fraud charges. Restitution. Patricia moved out quietly 3 months later. And me? I did what my grandfather would have done. I rebuilt the dock. Real repairs this time. Paid with my own money. And I put up a new sign at the gate. Bigger. Firmer. Mercer Landing. Private with purpose. Respect earns invitation. Entitlement earns a gate. Some Saturdays, families fish there. By request, by permission, by something stronger than a bylaw ever written. Mutual respect. Sometimes, when the water's quiet enough, I swear I can hear my grandfather say, "Told you, boy. Paper doesn't make truth. People do. So tell me, and be honest, if your whole community turned against you, would you still fight for what's yours, or would you hand over the keys just to make the noise stop?" Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them on the dock.